How do you know that your system is secure?
And how do you know that you are thinking about security correctly?
Isn't that a little too meta?
What do you mean?
Not only do we have to secure our systems, we have to secure our thoughts on security as well?
In a manner of speaking.
What do you mean?
You'll find out soon. This is David Allen Greer.
And Tamara Carlton.
With a cybersecurity edition of How We Manage Stuff.
With security experts Bruce Mcmillan and Gerry Howser, who'll be talking about their new article in Computer Magazine. Before we go any further, you have to explain this idea of keeping your thoughts secure.
Sure.
Because I'm not sure that our audience understands that.
Okay.
And so they're going to be completely confused when Anna comes in to explain it.
You don't think Anna confuses them anyway?
Yes, a bit, but they find her cute and endearing. But this is the problem. You and I have been to dozens.
Probably more like hundreds.
Okay, hundreds of briefings where some engineer tries to explain some technical ideas with some kind of metaphor.
Cybersecurity is like securing a castle by raising the drawbridge.
Sure. Cybersecurity is like securing a castle by raising the drawbridge. And while you leave the briefing feeling that you understand what was being said, you realize maybe 30 minutes later,
or 15,
or even 5, that you either didn't get what the presenter was saying,
or what they said didn't make sense to begin with.
Right. The metaphor didn't make sense at the start.
We're going to do something about that problem before our guests get here.
Really?
Yes. And I've asked Anna, who's our intern, to make a brief presentation about the basic idea.
And what idea is that?
How we use castles and fortifications to describe cybersecurity.
Okay. This will be interesting.
Oh, it will be. Anna, are you there?
Yes, I am, David and Tamara. I'm Anna, the senior cybersecurity expert at How We Manage Stuff, and I'm here with Sully, our policy and PR person. We're going to explain why castles are like cybersecurity. We are.
I think we're going to explain why cybersecurity is like a medieval castle.
Now, I know you're not a technical person, so you can just follow me. We're in a medieval town, and it has a real castle in the center of it. A real castle.
Anna, we're in Anaheim, California, and it's not medieval.
Yes, it is. It was founded in the 1950s.
But that's not the Middle Ages.
Of course it was the Middle Ages. It was in the middle of the century.
But that is not the Middle Ages.
But medieval towns have German names. Anaheim is a German name. So it must be medieval.
But that just doesn't make sense.
Of course it does. Anaheim. It means Anna's home in German. It's named for me.
That doesn't make sense. It's not named for you specifically.
No. For all Annas, and that includes
But that doesn't
me.
make it medieval.
Sully, this is what is called evidence-based narrative process.
A story based on facts rather
It's
than...
based on evidence. What you see around
Rather
you.
than making something up out of whole cloth?
Well, if castles were made of cloth, we would. But they're made of stones. And that's the evidence it is. Of course, we're making it up, but it's based on evidence.
The evidence is that we're standing in the parking lot of Disneyland.
Which is the medieval center of Anaheim.
And it's not really medieval.
Oh, but of course it is. It was founded in the 1950s by Count Disney and his brother, the Undercount. You can see their castle on the horizon. It was one of the first things that they built here.
But that's not a real castle.
Of course it's real. You can go up and touch it. You can.
Okay. What I meant to say
You see,
was...
all medieval towns had a castle in the center. The castle was where the king lived, but it also had markets and places to store food and room for the citizens of the town if they were attacked.
But Walt Disney...
Count Disney.
If you insist. Count Disney didn't live there.
Right, but his son Prince lived in this castle.
Prince Disney?
Yeah, that's right. They named him after the musician. They did.
But I thought that Disney didn't have a son.
Oh, yes, he did. But he went by the last name Charming and became famous in the toilet paper industry.
Toilet paper.
That's right.
Ah, yes.
You
the
see,
other pronunciation.
castles were surrounded by rings of walls to keep invading armies out. Sometimes these walls would be surrounded by bodies of water called moats. If the townspeople saw an invading army, they would rush into the castle, raise the drawbridge, and lock the gates on the walls and go hide. They would.
Okay.
You see,
That's
the
right.
townspeople didn't live in the castle all the time. That would have been too cramped, too cramped. And the bathrooms with medieval toilet paper, that would have been bad. So they only lived there when they were in danger.
Sure. And if the invading army was strong, they rushed to the castle and burned the fields to prevent the enemy from finding enough food to stay.
And they obviously did that here.
What do you mean?
When the invaders came, the Disney family burned the fields. Just look at this parking lot. Nothing has grown here for at least 50 or 60 years. And in its prime, it could probably have fed hundreds of families.
I don't think that the Disneyland castle was ever attacked.
Oh, of course it was. By the Pirates of the Caribbean. How do you think that they got here? It's not like the Pirates of the Caribbean were native to California. Did you ever think of that?
No.
Because they weren't.
Never entered my mind.
Good. Castles are the last line of defense, not the first.
Exactly.
Your first line of defenses moved around. They did. They were scouts and advance guards and things. There were parking lot attendants who stopped attackers coming from over the border from places like Bakersfield or something. And Tinkerbell. Tinkerbell, of course, who could fly around and stop enemies before they got to the gates. Good old Tink.
I can see what you're saying.
And hippos. They put hippos in the moats to keep people from swimming across.
I don't think...
Because hippos are very fast in the water. Very fast indeed. They'd catch the intruders and drag them to the bottom of the moat where it wouldn't be good for them. Not good at all.
Of course not. But I had thought that moats were usually filled with...
Oh, that's not true.
Fish.
Not true at all. Did you know that more people are killed by hippos every year than by any other animal that lives in the water?
No, I didn't know that. But don't some
live in the
hippos...
castle? Yes, they do. But they are domesticated descendants of the originals. They are very tame and friendly. And some have taken careers in the arts.
Like teaching dance?
Yes, ballet, because they are so mobile. And some taekwondo.
Martial arts?
That's why they were the ones to catch the attackers first.
Right.
So you should only lock the gates, pull up the drawbridge, and burn the parking lots if you are in deep, deep trouble. You're going to be living in a tiny little castle with a lot of people in costumes and pirates. Pirates of the Caribbean, because they live there now. And of course the medieval bathrooms. Is that any way to treat your cybersecurity?
Anna, you just leave me, well, speechless.
That's a wrap. Strike the set. Drop the green screen.
Madam Valkyrie, so good. What you doing here?
Underneath my wings. A little project management. Great scene, everyone. Not bad yourself, but you're going to need to have more lines that are actual full sentences if you want to get an Oscar.
What's happening?
Good try, but that's just too short. Breaking set. We just finished the podcast scene.
But weren't you and I going to do this scene at Heidelberg Castle in Germany?
Well, we were, but you apparently didn't see the morning's call sheet. There you go again. You need a verb. Too expensive to fly a cast and crew there. Plus, the castle no longer has a moat. So we did Disney on a green screen.
That can't be.
Remodeling in the 17th century. It was called the 30 Years' War.
Was that before or after the Middle Ages?
But I was so looking forward to gallivanting with you through the hidden corridors of the palace.
And I was looking forward to losing your sorry soul long before we got to the castle. Like in the duty-free section of the Frankfurt airport.
I love duty-free.
But here's the point. Real defense is dynamic. Real defense tries to thwart intruders long before they get to castle walls. Real defense tries to process every bit of information and identify the real weaknesses. When the battle gets to the castle itself, you're fighting a last-ditch effort for your lives and data.
So this green screen skit was just a pretension to embarrass.
Keep working, and you'll get a good line soon enough. Don't inflate yourself any more than you already do. We thought that we could accurately explain how castles work and how they reflect the problems of cybersecurity using a fake castle with a narrative that didn't have a word of truth.
So two fakes make a true?
On a podcast, they do.
What do you mean the narrative wasn't true? What about the pirates and the hippos? They're evidence.
Evidence is what you make it to be. David, Tamra, back to you.
Evidence-based narratives. Fake castles. real defense.
Those are exactly the themes that we're going to consider with our guests.
Today we have noted cybersecurity experts Bruce Mcmillan and Gerry Howser. It's good to have you both with us today.
Hello.
Hello.
Bruce, Gerry, could you let our audience know a little about yourself?
I'm a professor of computer science and associate dean of research at the Missouri University of Science and Technology. I have been working now for the last probably 17 years in the electric smart grid and for the last 10 years in terms of security of cyber-physical systems in general.
Gerry?
I'm originally from Missouri. I got heavily involved with setting up the public internet for Missouri, a thing called MORENET, Missouri Research and Education Network. Now I live in Michigan, and I teach at Kalamazoo College.
Our subject today is cybersecurity, and the question is, where do we begin?
I think we think of cybersecurity a lot like the medieval people who built castles. I've got a way to access my data, and I log in with my user ID and my password, and I'm in, and I'm secure. The problem with that is with the medieval castles, the walls are fairly easy to breach.
The lesson to take from all this is you need to stop looking at keeping the bad guys out and keeping the good guys in, and start looking at how do I deal with it knowing the bad guys are going to get in? How can I minimize the ways they can cause me problems? How can I minimize the ways they can get in that I can't find out who's getting in or where they're getting in from?
The attackers are very, very savvy at finding holes in your defenses.
But isn't it good to keep the bad guys out? Is your point that we need more?
You may have heard of a attack that happened a number of years ago called Stuxnet. It went against an Iranian nuclear processing facility, and the idea was to disrupt the processing of high-quality fuel. Very, very clever, because what it did is it knew it could get inside the firewall. What made it very clever is it could masquerade as correct operation. It could sit inside the firewall and pretend to the operator everything is good, everything is fine, because it learned how the system operated. It learned how to be a masquerader. But what it was really doing, it was actually disrupting the process.
It dawned on us that if you were to simply believe the cyber messages coming, you thought everything was okay, but all you really had to do was go down and just physically check the speed of the centrifuges, and you would have known there was some kind of attack going on. And it turns out that there are lots of cyber physical systems where you can use the physical things that you can measure to ensure that you're not being attacked at that particular instance.
We need to completely rethink the way we look at this. It's the notion that getting inside is just the starting point.
What happened to the castles? People started figuring out ways to dig under them, lob things over the wall. And now we're having to live with the fact that this type of security where we have a castle wall no longer serves us. There are too many ways around it and too many people trying to find holes in our security.
So the problem shifts from one of keeping intruders out to the problem of identifying them once they have gotten past your outer walls.
Think about how you would detect a masquerading intruder. You can ask them questions and they can continue to lie to you in a perfect way. But suppose you've got another source of information. The more sources of information you have, the more possibility you have to detect the intruder.
And so the lesson for our audience is?
I think a lot of our security is still grounded in the Middle Ages. But I think we've seen that it's simply inadequate, and you're led into a false sense of security if you believe that just user ID and password is going to be enough. We really need some significant research to be able to understand how to look at much better ways of securing our systems.
Thank you, Gerry and Bruce, for being on our podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you, David and Tamara.
I'm not sure what I'm going to remember most from today's show. The Stuxnet virus, or on a strategy for defending the Disneyland castle.
But they're the same thing.
Only because once you start using a metaphor to think about problems, you only get the answer that comes from that metaphor.
Sure, like the Pirates of the Caribbean attacking a Bavarian castle.
Only to be thwarted by hippos.
Instead of trying to think clearly about the evidence. And so we come to the end of today's episode.
For How We Manage Stuff, this is Tamara Carlton.
And David Allen Greer. Take care.
Evidence. Real evidence. That's what we need. You can get more evidence by subscribing to How We Manage Stuff through iTunes or Google Play or our website, howwemanagestuff.com, or wherever fine podcasts are sold. This is episode 16360 and is copyright 2016 by Jaggy LLC, all rights reserved.